Each week, the prefects meet the warden to discuss the issues of the day.
It's not anything to do with what we've been talking about, but I was wondering if you could help me clear up some rumours about the golf course. The Grapevines has it that some ORs donated money for the golf course, and I was wondering whether A, that was a significant amount, you know, whether if it was in the region of 30,000 or something, or whether it's just 5 or 6, because I'm positive that a very large proportion of the college, and I have suspicion that a large proportion of Comerham, feel the money could be better spent.
Radley's worldwide appeal has been running for 2 years. In that time, parents and old Radleyans, or ORs, who are scattered over every continent and into every nook and cranny of the globe, have remitted to their old school cash and covenants to the value of over £500,000.
And the cheque for $1,000.
The appeal for money is run by a classics master, Mr. Money. The trust itself is administered by the Friends of Radley, who've so far bought the school an arts centre and new squash courts. But the proposal to use appeal money to turn this arable land into a golf course has aroused passions.
I don't know what you feel about this, but if there was any way in which we, as members of the college, can try and persuade the members of the council that they've got their priorities wrong.
Well, you see, I have to tell you that I think that when a decision has gone as far as this one's gone, it's probably irreversible. I wouldn't know how to even to set about it.
Because I mean, I'm sure
everyone's priorities are different. I mean, their arguments were, which game lasts you longest in the course of your life? Golf. Which is the fastest expanding game in the country? Golf.
On a more general aspect of it, is there any way of letting the boys know what's actually being talked about in these meetings? Or
But the council is obviously the governing body, and a great deal of what they talk about is, you know, what you might call privileged material, and it's financial and really not anything that a boy need concern himself about.
It just worries me that most Radleyans, the first thing they knew about it was when that third list of donors came round. The trustees had decided to build a golf course, and everyone said, golf course, golf course? What the hell do we need a golf course for?
I expect they said exactly the same at Eton and Harrow, but they're making very, very good use of it. More and more people are taking up golf.
When were they built?
In the last 2 years.
The head of his house, D-social, and in line to become head prefect, David Van Os decides to defy the warden. He commits his views to paper in a critical essay entitled Window Dressing, which he distributes to Radley's Action Group.
We've got to talk about the printing anyway.
Discussion now.
No society at Radley can meet without a master or don being present. The Radley Action Group meets under the eye of one of the school's music staff, Donald Payne.
The warden took the view that you couldn't really ask a whole load of ORs to take their money back, which they've been told is going to be spent on this golf course. So, there's two things. Do we flog this one, or is it a dead horse? Do we carry on trying to get the rest of the college in such a frenzy that the golf course is stopped through weight of public opinion, or do we just try and stop it happening again?
I think as far as this goes, we can leave the golf course in as an example, because even if it's a dead horse, it's a fairly good example. And if we can't do anything about it, well...
Donald Payne is particularly sensitive about spending large sums. He campaigned for the new organ in chapel, built at a cost of £130,000.
I think it's a waste of time to try and do anything about it as a decision.
How much of the money was actually given for the golf course?
You wouldn't tell me.
No,
he dodged that one very, very neatly.
Let's not pursue it. It is a dead horse, I think, and it's going to be an awful waste of time. I suggest we just leave it in this pamphlet as an example of the sort of thing we're talking about. We can change the necessary tenses or whatever simply to say that a typical example of this was the golf course, and would the money have been better spent, something like that. But obviously leave it as a decision which has been made. But as an example, is everybody happy about this leaflet going out in this form with those amendments? Okay? Right.
What exactly is window dressing? I mean, as a concept.
Well, it's, I think, felt by quite a number of people in the college, boys and dons, that quite a lot of things, particularly which we've been spending money on recently, are for the surface appearance of the college rather than for its basic vital functions. It could be spending money on minor details around the college, particularly perhaps to sell it to future customers, than primarily in the interests of the boys.
The Action Group would like to circulate Van Oss's article to the boys, but before this can happen, the warden has to agree.
Their idea is that, with your permission, they would like to distribute copies of that, just as an introduction of what it's all about.
May I just read it?
If you'd like to, yes. You've got that one, David. Let's see.
I think that's very reasonable.
And then to follow that 24 hours later with distribution, printing and distribution of this all over college, which is the first of the what seem to be called opinion sheets.
So you chose the golf course rather than the organ.
Dreaded golf course, yes. Well, we do believe that the organ has a slightly different function in the school compared to the golf course.
It's twice as expensive.
Ah, yes.
What would you be hoping for?
Some intelligent discussion.
Good. That's fine. I think there's some points in here that would repay some discussion. I'm full of eager expectation.
Yeah.
Good.
So
Fine. Thank you very much. That makes a lot of sense to me. Well done.
Thank you.
So the ball's in your court now.
Personally, no, I don't think we do go in for window dressing. I think we do try and do what we do as well as we possibly can, but I wouldn't call that window dressing. I think we have specifically tried to avoid window dressing. I think you can't look yourself in the eye if you are given to a polished exterior which is rotten inside. I think I know what you're referring to, and I think it's a very healthy thing that boys should criticise the system. I wouldn't have it otherwise, but I think in that particular instance, the criticism may have been misdirected.
Another expensive frill that might be considered part of the window dressing syndrome is this sophisticated printing press, now being used to bite the hand that feeds it.
Reaction to this amazing thing went out yesterday. I thought most people read it quite sensibly. I don't know about you. I know we had to clear up about 80 from Hall.
Well, we expected that, surely.
Yeah, but I personally feel, this is me rather than the Action Group, everyone who I've spoken to thinks that number one on the list, the golf course, everyone is against it completely. And so I'm going to point out to the warden that, and well, no, to the friends Radley more correctly, that X hundred boys disagree with their ideas. Now, whether or not that is something the group wants to cooperate with, but I'm going to do it anyway.
We don't want the future of the Action Group to depend on a decision about the golf course.
That is why.
Yes.
That is why.
I don't think really the Action Group ought to be associated with any.
That's what I wanted to know. Well, I'm going to.
That's how I feel. Anyway.
Yeah.
So David Van Oss is on his own, but his lone initiative to marshal pupil power against the golf course faces another obstacle. He can make no headway at all without the warden's blessing.
Is that a question?
It's a statement.
It was the statement. I try to keep it simple, simply because...
You say here, I think that there are better things to spend 50,000 on than a golf course. I thought you were giving them a questionnaire.
Well, no, I was
You were
saying...
just making a statement.
I was asking whether they agree with that or not. But, I mean, the thing is, there's a very definite point to be made.
Yes, and I think the point is being made.
Yeah.
But there may be points to make the other way.
Oh, I agree,
and
sir.
I'm all in favour of balance rather than imbalance, and maybe we can talk about it.
I agree, sir. The only thing is that you know as well as I do that, democracy, it doesn't really work in a place like this.
Well, it doesn't set out to be a democratic institution.
And therefore,
it sets out to be an ordinary school. Well, anyway, look, I've got to go and teach.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about that later. I don't find that really... I don't know quite what that means. Okay. We'll talk about that later.
Right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, well, look, I'll tell you what I know.
We don't want to give it to the council, we want to give it to the...
Yeah, but what I'll do, I'll go copy for council, copy for warden, and copy to every trustee who I can get hold of the address of. Make sure you get a reply from everyone, okay? But get only the yeses to sign it. But don't. Make sure you ask absolutely everyone. There's a hefty rumour that money was given, all the 50,000 quid was given specifically for the golf course. Now, I couldn't get the warden to give me a figure. The other thing is, the yeses have got to come from the sixth formers, more than anyone else. But the more shelf people who are going to be here in 5 years' time you can get, the better as well. Can you put your form? Can you put your shelf?
No, we're not.
No, do you agree with it? Can you put your form? Who's refused to sign it?
Well, I think he has been forewarned now that there is a fairly strong groundswell of opinion in this place that too many decisions are taken by too few people. And quite a lot of decisions that affect dons and boys fairly intimately are virtually done with no consultation at all. This is obviously particularly true, I think, on financial grounds, such as the don's salaries, things like that.
There are over 60 dons. Most live and eat on the campus, the cost being reflected in their salaries, which range from 3,500 to only 6,500 after 20 years.
OK, looking reasonably cheerful. On the 3, 1. Oh, come on.
But the dons aren't too cheerful. They feel that tied cottages are all very well, but they'll never be able to afford a home of their own. They put these views to 2 of Radley's governors, who in turn will report their mood to the governing body or council.
For me, what I get in 1 month is what I've got. I have absolutely no capital, and there is no possible chance of me ever being able to buy any major or spend any money on a house or buy anything major while I'm at Radley on the present terms. Right. What we can do about that, I don't know, and it is a sign of the times. I couldn't agree more. But may I just make one point, that 3 years ago I left the army, and I did say to Mickey, and he'll be the first to support me on this, that I was very pleased to be able to say that coming to Radley, I was slightly better off than I was as a captain in the army. Well, my contemporaries now are something like £4,000 a year better off than I am. And I'd just like to say that, not because I don't think the army should have pay rises, because I'm very much a supporter of that, but just to slightly refute the point that you made that everybody is getting worse off, because certainly all my army colleagues and policemen and a number of people have got better off. And I think there might be a sense, for some of us, that, you know, we're swimming against the tide and it might be tricky. We love being here. I wouldn't want to teach in any other establishment. But I would like to be able to save some money, and I can't.
What I'm saying is that I think that there might be a tendency to move towards cash salary as opposed to some of the benefits that derive from working at Radley.
But the total amount available ultimately depends on fee income, doesn't it?
That's where you get to it, of course, and we might find the situation, I suppose, at its worst, where the fees were so gigantic that nobody could afford to send their boys here, and we would all be out of work. So, I mean, where are you?
I mean, in some ways it might be helpful to Common Room if council or part of council could produce some sort of paper showing the way in which they felt comparability with other similar schools was achieved in a salary manner. In other words, showing what they considered various benefits were worth and so on.
That would be quite wrong, because after all, these things are completely confidential. I don't think that Eton would want to tell us what exactly their masters were paid, and you wouldn't want us to tell Eton what you paid.
Well, except that a year or two ago it was stated firmly by council that we would be paid on a comparability level with Burnham. And that was categorically stated, and it was stated that all rugby group schools were going to do the same thing. Now, if this is so, why is it was, honestly, why is it so secret?
Michael, could I just back John's point in the sense that I have just moved here from another school, although I'm delighted... Sorry.
Well, getting less?
I would have to say that comparing the two salary scales, I'm delighted to be here, and obviously I wouldn't have moved unless I thought I was going to be. That as time goes on, because of the nature of the scale, I'm going to be worse off.
In the past, it appears we've been rather proud of the fact that Radley hasn't been one of the most expensive schools. One wonders why it hasn't. Have we, in fact, are we suffering as a result?
But actually, when making these comparisons with other schools of fees, that it ought to be done on a daily basis. Because it seemed to me that Radley had so many holidays and, you know, long leaves and this, that probably on a daily basis we were probably extremely expensive.
I doubt it. Sorry, Michael, I think we've drifted slightly away from the point I was making. And really what I'm getting at is that I think there is a feeling in Common Room at the moment that perhaps we are being paid in absolute terms less than a certain number of other schools.
It is a fact that this is most carefully looked at, and the information that is obtained is confidential. And I feel that you must accept that. Provided we can, as a council, as a governing body, make sure that the comparability with other schools of similar type is at least not worse at Radley than anywhere else. That's the best we can do. And if people can't manage, they'll have to go and find another job. I mean, you know, that's what it comes down to in the end.
Michael, how do you understand you right? You said that if we found we couldn't afford to work here, we should go and find another job somewhere else.
That is the
yeah, fine. Can I just take that argument to its logical conclusion? What is Radley going to do about finding the right sort of staff in the future? If people like myself and others find we've got to go and do another job, doesn't Radley feel there's a need to attract the best staff to teach here? And doesn't that come down to salaries?
I don't know.
Michael, I'm trying to think of it from Radley's point of view, that's all. I just think it's strange that you put that argument forward. I would have thought, from Radley's point of view, you would want to attract good staff to Radley.
Of course we do, and we have, and do.
I'm just suggesting that it might become more difficult.
Well,
there has been a little bit of evidence that it isn't that easy to get exactly the person you want.
There was a feeling that money was being channeled in the wrong directions. The Dons were upset at getting too little. David Van Os was upset that a golf course was getting too much.
Good morning again. Good morning. I just thought you'd like to see the total number of names. We got 457.
457?
You see, because it was organised with some haste, we didn't really have time to canvass more thoroughly. And seeing as the decision was made a year ago anyway, I don't think it was the real point of the petition.
Fine.
The other thing is that I'd very much like your permission to get some photocopies made so I can put one up in cover passage.
Copies
of that.
What I would prefer to see, just seeing a list of names, wouldn't really be very helpful. But if we could then do the next step, which is to say what they do want, what the 457 do think, then that would be helpful, and that would be worth putting a photocopy up in covered passage. Okay, well, you'd like that
Yes,
back.
please.
And then, I mean, but when you've got your A-levels over, it would be a very good exercise to do. Make a format out. Say at the top, you felt that there was something you would prefer to see. Could you list the things in your order that you would like to see?
Certainly.
And that would be really fascinating.
Yes.
I'd like to see that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, David.
Item 1, apologies for absence. Bursar?
So there are apologies from Mr. Erst, the Dean of Winchester, Mr. Parsons, Field Marshal Baker, Lord Scarman, Sir Patrick Nairn, Mr. Russell, Mr. Smerry, and...
The issue of the Don's salaries and further progress on the golf course will be the ultimate responsibility of Radley's governors.
Friends of Radley College, you have a letter attached, which Sir Patrick Nairn wrote to me about the golf course proposal, which the trustees are proposing to take on board. Pat's proposal is a small feasibility study.
Take advice on the cost of running a golf course, because I think that, you know, if we were given the Queen Mary, it wouldn't be much of a gift. And I think we ought to, so to speak, take that into view. I mean, we may get a jolly good outside income, but at the same time, I think we ought to know what the cost of running a club is.
I imagine that if we had a golf course, it could become self-financing. That ought to be our objective if we have it. I would like to raise, if I may, Chairman, one other point here, which certainly would be of interest to Council. In the past week or so, there's been quite a strong movement on the part of the boys who say that they would think that money should be spent on other things before the golf course. I realise that they are not the policy makers of college, but I feel in duty bound to report that to you.
A reaction?
No analysis of this has been done, and I pointed out that it is not perhaps their job to tell Council what to do, and that it may even not be a Council matter, but a matter for a separate group, the Friends of Radley Trust.
Yeah, but as you say, it's really a matter for the Friends of Radley Trust who are going to finance it. What we're being asked at the moment is if they mount a fairly modest in money terms feasibility study, will we share the cost? So that's as I understand it. And I would have thought we should say yes to that.
You would be mad to suggest that a school can be a democracy. I mean, essentially, as I see it, and many would disagree with me, but this is what I believe, a school must be paternalistic. These are young boys. Rightly or wrongly, we are standing in a paternal role, and we're prepared to play that role, and that's, in one way, what their parents are paying for.
The Don's salaries were first discussed by the General Purposes Committee at the Great Western Hotel, Paddington. The committee's chairman then makes his recommendations to Council.
And we're recommending to it, sir, that we should increase our salaries right across the board by 10%. I don't know whether that's something that the Council would want to look at in detail.
But I think before they take that decision, I think we would really want to hear from Michael Martin about the meeting he had with Common Room last.
We did have rather perhaps an uncomfortable meeting with the Dons on Wednesday evening, and we're clearly going through one of those stages which we've been through before, when there's a great deal of anxiety about comparability with other schools, inflation, and the general level of our salaries.
So we've got to take a decision whether we accept the GPC's recommendation for an across-the-board increase of 10%, which comes into effect at the beginning of next term. And I would have suggested that we should do.
Attendance at other meetings recently leads me to believe that other schools are going above this figure, and that a figure of 11 to 15% is likely to be more normal.
I have been making inquiries of other schools, and I think I could say that 12% would be much nearer normal. I don't actually know of one doing 10%. I think we've got 10% would now seem the minimal gesture that you could make.
Yes. This meeting was before the budget, when I think that it was reasonable to suppose that inflation was running at about 12.5%, or would run at about that level, and one sees figures of up to about sort of 19% talked about now.
I think also, Chairman, in view of the general atmosphere and slight militance which is present at the moment, perhaps 10% would be regarded as a slap in the face. I don't know.
Yeah, I think people might say that, but it's a sort of ludicrous thing that one reads in the papers. I mean, our masters aren't sort of trade union orientated in that sense, I don't think.
Would you be happy to have the GPC's recommendation of 10% raised to 12%?
Absolutely. If the bursar's examination with the warden's concurrence is that it ought to be 12, I think that the budgetary system will stand up to it, provided we do accept that the parents are paying at the end of the day.
Inevitably, decisions have to be made by a few people in the end. If they're to be effective, I talk to as many people as possible. I inform my governing body as well as I can. But equally, being human, I err very often. But I can see no way round the governing body making the ultimate decisions. That's what they're there to do. They're called the governing body. They govern.
That's a masterpiece. In fact, it's
a working dinner. The hosts are the masters and warden of Radley. The guests are dons, mostly from Oxbridge colleges. This dinner is part of a continuing dialogue between Radley and the universities. Oxbridge are after creaming off the brightest and best. Radley wants to be part of that cream, and dinners like this help. For masters are kept abreast of what Oxbridge and the provincial universities are actually looking for, and they forge useful personal links with the very men who will read their testimonials and appraise their product.
Good evening. I'm very hungry. Yes, I'm terribly hungry. So is my guest. You just go on piling everything you think I like. Thank you very much.
One boy in 5 goes on from Radley to an Oxford or Cambridge college.
Some 20. Some 30.
James Eady is hoping to get into Cambridge. If he is to do so, he will first need to get good grades in his 3 A-levels, English, French and History.
Okay, get up.
Eady's friend Rupert Gaither is hoping to get into Oxford. He too will need to get good grades in his A-levels, which are also English, French and History.
I quite look forward to the prospect of going to university, actually. For me, it's quite appealing.
I rather sort of fancy myself as sort of the cultured intellectual, although I'm not particularly intellectual.
I went down to Magdalen, Cambridge last holidays. I mean, you can never tell, though. If you go there early, it's just really whether you reckon the college suits you, as it were.
It's one to get to Oxford, you know. I mean, I couldn't face the thought of being stuck away somewhere in Rotherham, you know.
See, that's what you're aiming at. That's what O-levels and A-levels have been going for. So if you muck up the A-levels and then you muck up Oxbridge, or you muck up Oxbridge, then that's... I mean, it's not 5 years wasted. But if that's what you're aiming for and you don't get it in the end, then it's a bit sad, really.
I want to get to Oxford, okay? I want to get to Balliol. That's really tough. I mean, Balliol's meant to be sort of the ivory tower of the colleges. Well, actually, it's not anymore. It's a bit of a fallacy because apparently, word has it, they're trying to sort of get some of the lower orders in, as it were, because they couldn't get enough people.
No, well, it's a fair gamble for both of them. I mean, James, again, ought to sail through. I mean, in European terms, he's a bit of a Robespierre. He's a cold, clinical sort of fellow who I would guess will achieve most of his goals in life. And I think we all respect him very much indeed. I'm not saying we all love him very much, but he will be successful. And he would come over very, very powerfully in interview, I would think. Rupert, there are probably a lot of characters in history that he could fit the bill for, but I doff you Danton. You know, full of goodwill, good heart, but not always with the stamina to see something through to the end. The moral courage, perhaps, lacking. And just how much work he's really done and how much reading he's really got through, I wouldn't be prepared to say. And I think that might become exposed in an Oxbridge interview.
A-level results, probably you'll get them around the 18th of August, I hope, if it's in this country. And finally, those envelopes that you've now got, and write an A or an O, whichever's relevant to the address you're writing, an A or an O in the top left-hand corner.
Bonjour, Monsieur Buckner, oui. Bonjour, Ricard.
5 years in the classroom are funneling rapidly to a climax. Final periods before the fatal fortnight are spent in revision, in question spotting, and in examination tricks of the trade.
Only you can now prevent these mistakes. When you're up against a difficult word, there are various ways of dealing with it. One is to do a Sebastian and just leave it out. This is obviously fatal as regards that particular word. The other is, or the next and most usual one, is to try and think of some other way of saying it. But don't forget, of course, the possibility of really sort of searching in your memory and searching sideways, and you may find something which is will do quite well. And there's yet another possibility, and that's what I call the Bruin type of approach, meaning what's the French for a bear? Answer un bruin, or whatever it is. And one of you gentlemen did that over the business of his, what is the matter, Philip? She cried, for his face was ashen grey.
Yes, I've got ashen.
La visage était grisâché, et il était obviously sur le point de fainter. That isn't really going to get us anywhere. In fact, it's doing yourself a bit of injustice.
French is a walkover. And you're either going to get a French A-level or you're not at the beginning of the first year 6. And if you're not going to get one, you're not going to get one. It's as simple as that.
Right, well, gentlemen, what you're getting this afternoon for the first 5 minutes are Huddy's hints for higher expectations. What you actually do when you go into that exam room and you've written down your 2 or 3 quotes and all that.
But see, history is the sort of subject where you just keep on working. I mean, you can't stop if you do it properly.
Just suppose that your maximum grade, just suppose the 1 or 2 who can't go above B grade, just a couple of you perhaps, your maximum score is 14. Now, if you get 3 14s, what does that make?
42.
Right, brilliant. And if you've got a 0 in your 4th essay, in other words, you've got it wrong, 42 is a fail. And it doesn't matter how well you do those first 3 essays, if you don't do yourself justice in the last one, you're down in the dead men. Don't go more than 3 minutes over the allotted time, ever. And do take a watch. Edie's been wearing a watch in his top buttonhole pocket for months, and I've never understood what it's for, but this time it might just come good if it actually works. Does it work?
Yes, it does work.
Brilliant. Right, well, I do honestly suggest you all have your own timepiece.
Personal hints.
None of these boys are going to fail in English. At Radley, you don't fail to get an A-level. It's simply the quality of the grade in which you pass that matters.
And there is, of course, only one thing to avoid. Waffle. Those headings are put underneath there, such as padding. By padding, I mean things like using people's Christian names, referring to William Shakespeare rather than Shakespeare, that sort of thing. Slang. Do avoid that. An awful temptation to things like Cleopatra going with Antony, that sort of or there was no way that Barbers could do this, that, or the other. Awful. You must be able to walk into that exam room, sit down, and the rest of the world does not matter. Nothing matters at all. Now, what's just happened there will happen over and over again in the exam room, and it will go away.
Yes, just a minute.
So the long summer days of the phony war passed. And as the boys were force-fed facts and hints, they were united with every A-level candidate in the land, longing for it to be over, longing for the holidays, for any distraction, any relief. And it so happened relief was at hand, an itinerant group of Norwegian girls with a programme of national folk dancing. An oasis for boys thirsting for a frolic in the dry groves of Academe.
OK, well, don't be unsubtle about it, though. I tell you what, though, what you need is a pair of trousers on. I will be unsubtle if you think it. They'll just look subtle.
Waiting for us?
See if you trip. Ah, will you wait?
Their display over, the Norwegian girls had come down to the river for an afternoon to watch the rowing.
What we need to do is to find a little bit and sit down and have a chat.
Everyone's going to school when you can.
God's sake, Nina, just control yourself. Oh, come on, Vincent, have a cigarette. It's all right, my pleasure. Have a cigarette. Have a cigarette, small size. Please, chuck me some matches. Can I have Herbie, please? Chuck me Herbie, Ruth. You find out all the dons come up to you and tell you that if you fool around, you're going to muck up your A-levels because you haven't got the right attitude and you're not buckling down. You must let a muck really. I mean, it's fine. I mean, what you do in your spare... And there are certain times you aren't going to work. You're not going to work during meals, and you're not going to work during short break. And so, frankly, the more steam you can let off, then the better. Yeah, perhaps you'd like to get up in the face.
Okay, piss off.
You sod off. Damn good razor.
What?
Don't. Here, let's have it.
You can't have it. Well, piss off. No, you can't have that either. Just read your bloody paper and go down.
An armpit.
Spot the crowd.
Real armpit.
Spot the girl.
Dave.
I had a lot of trouble last year, with one thing and another. And I nearly got seen to the station, sort of thing. So ever since then, I have been sort of, certainly consciously watching my step, keeping my nose clean. I don't actually keep it perfectly clean, but I appear to keep it clean.
Come on.
Careful, you're bloody pushing your thing.
Oh, God.
What? I know Steve was shooting crows at 6:30 this morning with his shotgun. I promise you, he's bloody cracked.
He's gone. I reckon A-levels have gone to his head.
The two most important things for those, apart from the academic side, is the interview and the warden's report. And, I mean, frankly, I've got a lot to gain, I mean, in a mercenary way, if I was to keep my nose clean. And so the warden gives me a charming report. I think he quite likes me, and he keeps on saying so anyway. But, so if I really butter him up just a bit, just to give it a bit of a zest.
Rupert,
I just brought some proposals about the library. I didn't know if David else mentioned anything about...
He has, actually. Have you got a moment?
Yeah, I have. I've got
Okay, let me just... I've got to go and teach him.
I see.
Okay. I think I agree with just about everything in here, but I always have. But anything that could, as you say here, revitalize the library must be a good thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I will bring that up and see what sort of a response I
Well, I've got to get 3 A grades because Tuesday's report and the warden's report, by the look of last term's report, isn't going to be too sparkling. So it's going to have to go on academic, really, and sport as far as that allows. I mean, Rupert's different, because he's not, I mean, it doesn't really matter so much for him, because he's going to get a bloody good ACCA report anyway. He does the Wilson Lab and the warden's on his side, and he's going to get a good report in that sense. And so he's relying on something else. It's all a question of getting psyched up, actually. And it's going to happen. And if you don't do that, and you haven't put it in, and you're not confident, you're not psyched up, you're going to muck it up.
Well, you're well aware that this is the last period before the exam, and I've made it a voluntary one because I think this rather sifts out the question of is there anything left which you're worried about, or is there
I must confess I haven't worked over hard. Although, I mean, this last week, I mean, since half term, I've been actually pulling my finger out rather a lot. You know, I've been going to bed at 11:30 every night, so I probably sort of collapse when the exams come.
Will you please go in? Sit down. Don't crowd in the doorway. Please remember, stay put at the end of your exam. Murder.
Worse. Took a bit of time to get into it.
Yeah.
Takes you about 5 minutes to wake up at 9 o'clock.
What about you, Rip?
Leaves you shaking fast. What was it?
I tell you, I just...
How much do you write?
I wrote 7 pages.
Yeah.
What did you write on? What was it?
I wrote 10.
I just couldn't suss it out, everything. What was going on? I mean, this...
Compact was quite difficult. Or did you write on compact?
No, I didn't. I did that. I mean, I didn't know.
I tell you, that's difficult, man.
I know it was.
You're just a bit of a moron.
You have to tell me. It's all going to be like that. Come back.
All the exclusions are improvised. Yeah, actually, cool
halfway through the cast.
You got business so tomorrow morning?
Yeah. Me just doing English.
Yeah, I have to. I just keep thinking just a hurdle. Just get over it and that's it. Forget it.
Yeah.
And get to take the next one and it's right.
I'm not looking forward to Chaucer.
Chaucer is not short. I know,
Yeah.
but even so, you don't.
Well, Dennis section. Universal.
I could have must have passed that.
In social, I can't really work because I'm right next to social hall. So there's all the new boys never seem to do any exercise. It will spend the whole afternoon squeaking. And the library I just go to sleep in. And so here, you know, just get a bit of a breeze going and it keeps you awake or something.
Nice too. This
Yeah. Is this something totally different?
Yeah, totally different.
It's okay. I didn't do Parliament first. Go back this way.
No, mate, he's coming up. Mind you, it's okay.
Yeah, he came out earlier.
It wasn't too bad, actually. It's not much better than I expected it to be. I feel f***ing ill. Christ. I really have. I've got a real brain strain.
I feel actually dead.
Yeah, well, I tell you, I reckon I've got clues. Headache and I feel ill and I feel like puking. Jay. I do, I feel like vomiting. I felt like this after the Samson agonistic exam.
But if Rupert Gaither, James Eady and co. thought that was the end, they were mistaken. It wasn't the end. It was the beginning.
I sort of bore you with talking about exams just after you finish the last lot. In case you're not clear, the exams that you actually have to face differ from Oxford to Cambridge. Barry, do you want to dish out some bits of paper and...
Although Oxbridge takes serious note of A-levels, it still retains its own entry system and its own examinations.
It looks a bit forbidding, but as far as the tragedy thing is concerned, I think the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, is that you've got actually a holiday which is the same length of time as you'll have next term to actually be taught anything. And the more you can read, the better. You really should spend the whole holiday reading as much as you possibly can, because you'll never get the time to do it. And next term, we want to spend as much time talking as we can. And I'd like to feel that the first day we meet, we can start talking sensibly about Shakespearean tragedy, and you've got some ideas.
If you can shove it as far back as possible, let me... All right? Marvellous.
I don't know where my case is. I'll just go out and get it. I better go out and get it.
Do you want to take that?
Go try.
Yeah, because I've got to play on Wednesday.
Is I bung it in the boot?
No, there's no room with you.
Oh, mate. There's a lot of room in there.
Come on,
on your knees. Stop worrying.
Okay.
Ruth? Oh, just...
And so the summer term ended, and the A-level candidates scattered to the cities and the shires to await the brown envelopes. On August the 15th, Mary, the warden's secretary, returned to the college with the results she'd picked up from the examination board in Oxford.
Oh. What a frightful moment. I'm sure if the boys realised how much we were filled with nerves, they would be sorrier for us than we are.
383 A-levels were sat and there were only 5 failures, but overall it's a slightly disappointing year.
Rosling got A1, A1A.
Oh, good.
Wade got 2 A's and a B. Could be a lot worse.
C, D and E grades make up over half of the passes, but in the crucial A and B grades, there are 60 A's and 83 B's. That's only 37% against a yearly average of 40%. James Eady has chosen a difficult set of subjects. Cambridge is besieged with applicants who want to read English and history. To stand a chance of a place at Magdalen, he's got to have 3 A grades.
Yes, what? Well, I shan't ever see it go.
had to explain it to me. I didn't understand anything with it.
Edie. A, A1 and A.
Oh, that's really good. That's really, really good. That's really, really good.
Excuse the drink then?
A, A1 and A.
Yeah, you bloody
James Eady went on to win a place at Magdalen College, Cambridge.
That's really, really good.
Would you get A1 A?
Is that better than anybody else?
Rupert Gaither also needed good grades if he was to stand a chance of a place at Balliol.
How are you feeling about that now?
Trifle worried. Just hang on. Just have a look. That's presumably AAE, is it?
That's right. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I didn't think I'd get any A's, but I thought I'd get more than an E. So in fact, I'm very pleased. I'm actually very pleased with that. I mean, I'm a bit upset about. Well, not upset, but I'm a bit sort of pissed off about the E in French. I suppose that's what I deserved.
Rupert, what is it?
Mixed blessings.
Oh dear, what?
I mean, actually, okay. I mean,
No, tell us.
well, first bad news, I got an E in French.
How did you manage that?
Well, lack of skill. But the good news, I got 2 A's in English and history.
Oh, well done. No, that's fabulous. Are you relieved?
Yeah, I am. The other bad thing is that I didn't get the English S level at all.
Didn't you?
Which isn't very impressive, in fact, especially for Oxbridge. I mean, I'm definitely going back next term, but I mean, that's it's a bit of...
Anyway, 2 A's.
I mean, it means I'm
very good.
I'm a weaker candidate for next term. That's what that means.
Rupert Gaither was turned down by Balliol. A few weeks ago, he was still knocking on the door of provincial universities.
Could have been worse.
It's fine, actually. I can't bother in English.
What? Did you give it an extra yes?
2.
How's it work?
I'm in here.
Will you give anybody else's name?
Who's taking the two stuff?
What does that count for, actually? C.
Well, that's just a general paper. That is, in fact, no levels. If you've got less than a C, you don't get the O levels.
One shortly, James Burke embarks on a new series called The Real Thing. 6 programs which examine our perception of reality.